What's happening there, Browns fans and OBR fans? Welcomes, and followers of the OBR streaming network. This is Pete and Joe, the February 3rd edition. Todd Monken speaks. Pete, we've got a coach, brother. How are you on this fine Tuesday afternoon?
Well, screw the Browns for doing it the last possible time to make sure we had to wait basically an entire week to talk about it. But yeah. It was good. It's good that we have a coach. It's good that he talked. It's good that we're starting to sort of set things in motion. And my biggest takeaway is so much of the freak out was unnecessary in terms of whether it was the Rooney Rule or they'll never be able to hire staff or all the other stuff was a non-factor for all this. These things will work themselves out and are working themselves out.
Well, you know how this stuff works, Pete. As soon as anything doesn't go according to perfect plan, everybody likes to play Chicken Little and scream the sky is falling and, this, that, and the other. It's nothing that we're, not used to or weren't expecting, so to speak. So the way this whole thing shook out, what surprised you? Anything?
I don't know if I'm surprised, honestly, because obviously, the Browns, Andrew Berry tried to downplay the idea that there was sort of a compromise. I mean, leading up to it, we were fed all kinds of crap from various rumor mills trying to sort of invent a power struggle, which is a fascinating concept to me because one guy owns the team and the other guy doesn't. Yeah. So it's it's a really short arm wrestling match. Get out. So to that, this notion of a compromise is interesting to me because I think that in these type of circumstances, that immediately has a hugely negative connotation. Yeah, because it suggests, and I don't think necessarily unfairly. I think if you're a Browns fan and you don't give this organization the benefit of the doubt, which they don't deserve based on their track record, and you hear the implication is that there's a compromised hire. Your immediate reaction is neither guy got what they want, and we're sort of stuck with this. And it was extremely positive, and you can write that off and say, well, they're trying to put on a happy face on this, and they're trying to sell this as best they can. Here's what I don't buy about that: Jimmy Haslam was legitimate. I mean, I was up there, and Jimmy Haslam was a very happy, ebullient guy. And he has multiple reasons to sort of be tense or stressed out on this day of all days. Because on the one hand, the Jim Schwartz thing is still out there. Yeah. We didn't get the pro wrestling style entrance halfway through where, they were bringing him back and doing that type thing. The other part
Jim Schwartz's music.
Yeah. That would have been awesome. I'm sure Jim would have been involved in that and been all about it. But that didn't happen. And then the other thing is, it came up because Jason Lloyd was there and asked about it. But Jimmy Haslam owns, a significant portion of the Bucs. And they're talking about trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is arguably one of the top 5 best players in the world. So, there's a lot on his plate. So if he was sort of wearing that stress, no one would have blamed him. And people obviously would have noted it and said, maybe he's not excited about this, but he was really happy, fired up. Andrew Berry, I say this all the time. He is his own best messenger. And I think today was a really good example of not only that, but just why on earth did you not do the press conference in the middle of the season? Because you are really good at this. You are good at selling a vision and sort of giving people something. And he was – Jim, Todd Monken could not have asked for a better introduction, and Andrew Berry gave him a really good build up in terms of what they want, process, all these things in terms of the things you'd want to hear if you're trying to build this guy up and sell him if that's what you think this is. But he gave some interesting insights, some details that, frankly, I wasn't aware of that give you the impression that no, he's really into this and yeah, they may have compromised, likely compromised, definitely compromised, but that they are not compromising from the standpoint of nobody's happy about it, but they're both sitting there going, man, I got something I really wanted. The other guy got something he really wanted, and we're genuinely excited about this. even if it's sort of in between where we were in terms of what we really wanted.
So here's my thing with the whole process, Pete. Going into this, I mean, and you gave me a little flack about it, but going into this, I had very positive thoughts about Mike McCarthy, right? Todd Monken is basically the version of Mike McCarthy that the Browns can get right now. Okay. The Browns aren't going to get your top end coaching candidates. They're just not. And when I mean top end, I mean like the elite guys that get to like pick and choose their jobs. Like the Browns were definitely in the market for Shieldhouse and, this, that, and the other. But either way, like a guy like McCarthy's kind of out of our reach. He's going to go to a safer spot, so to speak, right? I feel like the Browns told you all along that Monken was the guy. And this is something that I ignored. I completely did not pay attention to it because I didn't think he was a realistic candidate. I thought we were going young. I thought we were doing that, right? But he was the first name that was an outside candidate that was released. He was also the first name that was an outside candidate that you heard was getting a second interview. I'm just saying, like, maybe just because we disregarded it, the Browns were telling you that he is in the forefront of this discussion. And also, if you're Andrew Berry, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure he and Nate Shieldhouse hit it off and he could have worked with him and this, that, and the other. But if you're Andrew Berry and you need to field a winner, you need to field a good team next year. You need to, not only do you need to do your job in the draft, but the guy you pick as head coach needs to put a product on the field that can get you more time, buy you more times in this position. I would have to say that you feel safer with a veteran than you would with a first-time 35-year-old head coach, and go ahead.
To the extent that Todd Monken was at the forefront and part of the conversation, absolutely.
Yeah.
Does that tip their hand that, like, he was going to be the guy? No, but part of the discussion, sure. More serious than maybe we should have taken him? Maybe. Like, anybody who went through the whole process, given what we know about the process, I took seriously. So if you went through the whole rigmarole and the essays and all the crap people were making fun of, which, again, I will defend that because, like, all these people made fun of this notion, and Todd Monken in his press conference made it very clear, and I think Browns fans, there was an appetite for this. He would have crawled over broken glass to get this job.
Yeah.
Like, he wanted to be the head coach. And you can sit there and go, well, he had no other options, all these stuff. Yeah. You know who's more aware of that than anyone? Todd Monken. And he basically told you that in his press conference. So that part of it, interesting, I guess. As far as the rest of, like, Jimmy Haslam made it very clear that experience was important to him. He said it twice, like in each the lead up to it, and then his own individual thing. Like, clearly that mattered to him. Like, Andrew Berry was way better about sort of towing the company line in terms of the elements of, well, we didn't compromise or all this stuff. And then, like, Jimmy Haslam basically put it on Front Street. He wanted experience. And, like, to your point, that does bring some level of comfort. And the other part about that is Jimmy Haslam's clearly interested in winning fast. Some of this was talking about the notion of, well, if you hired Nate Shieldhouse or Grant Udinsky originally, like, there was going to be a learning curve. Jimmy Haslam's not interested in the learning curve. He's interested in a guy who can come in and start to get to work. And he basically said straight up, Andrew Berry's got to get him players, but it's time to go. And then, in his sort of separate presser, he did say they should win more football games. We'll see how true he holds that, but he thinks this team needs to win more football games this coming year. He thinks the team is going to be better this coming year. I think the second part is very realistic, but we'll see what that works out because the logistics are what, you just never know how the season's going to play out and all these other things. But, like, he laid it out there. So he made it very clear why he wanted experience, why he thinks this was an important element to him.
All right, two things real quick, Pete. Number one, it is official. The Cavaliers traded Darius Garland and a second-round pick to the Clippers for James Harden. And also, I want to address Chris in the chat. Why do you say McCarthy is an elite or a top candidate? And, Chris, I say this because, number one, his resume, and number two, he was with Green Bay, won a Super Bowl, got fired, took a year off, got the Cowboys job. was successful for the most part, got fired, took a year off, and then got the Steelers job. Now, the Packers, the Steelers, and the Cowboys, those are three of the most prestigious organizations in the NFL. I don't think you get those jobs if you're not an elite coaching candidate, personally. I know how we feel about McCarthy. I get it. I get the personal stuff. I get that he may have not told the truth about some PFF stuff. I don't know. I get it. I think he's a good coach. That's all. That's what that is rooted in. Okay, let's talk about Jim Schwartz real quick, Pete, because they touched on it a little bit in the presser. And I mean, it was pretty much, the impression I got was that, you know what, great. If he wants to stay and work out his contract, that's something that we'll deal with. But Todd Monken is not expecting it. He is not hoping for it. I mean, maybe not expecting it, but I would say this. I would be surprised if they had talked and everything's cool and they're probably going to come back and everything. I would be surprised that Monken spoke the way he spoke about it at the presser. And I certainly, he said with all due respect and stuff like that, but like, those are some interesting statements about your defensive core limbo right now, saying that, I didn't come here to coach Jim Schwartz or to coach with Jim Schwartz. I came here for 95. I didn't chip Jim Schwartz every play. I didn't have to worry about, Jim Schwartz didn't wear 21 or 9 or anything like that. What did you take about that part of it?
The most interesting part of that whole thing was him saying it wasn't going to change systems.
Yeah.
He put that out there, which was probably the newsiest thing he said all day. What I find interesting about this whole situation is like Todd Monken is handling this the way people wanted the Browns to handle this at the start of the coaching search.
Yeah.
Todd Monken did not handle this like most Browns fans thought the job was going during the, as the coaching search wore on. In other words, Todd Monken's not begging Jim Schwartz to stay. And I think he tried to posture himself from a position of strength and say, listen, Jim Schwartz is a good coach. I'd love to have him. But one, players, not coaches, which is 1,000% true. You came here because of players. You didn't come here, or players and opportunity.
Yeah.
He's right. He didn't block Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz made 0 tackles last year. Now, I think he also sort of posited this in a way to basically say, listen, which again, I found was interesting, saying we're going to run the same system. And I think that was a weird little message. One, I think this really hints at a promotion from within if he leaves, which gets to something Jimmy Haslam said in his own presser, which was really interesting. Then he kind of walked back. But it also sort of sends the message to Jim Schwartz, like, listen, we're running the same system. So if you leave and the guy who's in after you is better than you or does as well as you, nobody's going to care about you at this point. As far like, you're not going to be like, nobody's going to be wistful for Jim Schwartz if the guy they bring in or promote does just as good. So are you really willing to give up Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Tyson Campbell, Carson Schlesinger, Malik Collins, down the line, Mason Graham? Like, it's a really talented group.
It's the best defense he's ever had, and it's custom built for him and his system.
Who, look, I don't know what Jim Schwartz's chances are of ever making the Pro Football Hall of Fame are, but like, he's coaching a defense that could help him get there. Obviously the Browns have to win a whole lot more and like potentially win a championship, but he's already got 1 ring. And if he's got this legendary defense that he coaches for years and years as a great, great run, it really enhances his resume. If he wants to leave that badly, okay, but now he's risking something. And if it's over pride or whatever, so be it. But I think that was really the message was Todd Monken is presenting this as to Jim Schwartz. This is a great opportunity. He's not saying, please don't leave Jim Schwartz. And I think, people can criticize that and say, well, that he really should get on his hands and knees and beg him. One, he had nothing to do with any of this in terms of the Jim Schwartz element. He got the job. He didn't like stab Jim Schwartz in the back. He didn't wrong Jim Schwartz. He did none of these things. So he doesn't owe him anything. But I do think the way he sort of views the coaching element, and you heard him talk about no timeline, all these other things, like it'll take as long as it takes, that he's confident he can get somebody really good to do that, and that they will continue to be really good. And I'm inclined to believe him because Myles Garrett's not leaving. Denzel Ward isn't leaving. These are all going to be here, and those guys are going to play. And if they're playing the same system, if they promote Ephraim Bandar, if they have promote Jason Tarver or whoever, like, is there some potential drop off? Maybe, but it's not the most complicated system to run.
Yeah.
Hey, defensive line, get after it. We're going to call some stunts and stuff. Hey, DBs, it's man coverage. Like, okay, certainly there's details and everything else and the messaging and all those things that Jim Schwartz does really well. But I could see this being really successful without him. And the thing that sort of jumped out to me when this whole concept came up was, obviously this might throw a wrench in that, was if Jim Schwartz leaves, like we talked about this in terms of, well, if we want to get a young offensive coach to be innovative and all this stuff, which is a word that came up quite a bit with Todd Monken. Well, if Jim Schwartz leaves, there's like this part of you that goes, I'd like to do the exact same thing on defense. I'd like to be a young, innovative guy with this great opportunity, great defense, and see what they do. Like, how would they change this thing up? And how would they, like, what would their version be? Maybe they can come up with a change up that has sort of eluded this team in terms of coming up with other ways to defend opponents that sort of eliminate some of the elements that have gotten them beat at times, or, just more things that they can do well that cause problems for opposing offenses. Like, it's a non-zero chance that the guy that replaces Jim Schwartz ends up being better, or at least the defense ends up being better than he was.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, Pete, because if the Browns decide that they're moving on from Schwartz and that's no longer a thing, right, that opens up some possibilities. I mean, we can interview from within. You've discussed that from Banda multiple times. Jason Tarver and Jacques Césaire were both at the press conference today, which I thought was cool. Now, what would you think about, though? Like, say, I mean, I think those are three legitimate candidates right there, but say they want to go outside the building. I got to tell you, obviously we couldn't, pillage some other team's defensive coordinator, but that's a pretty solid carrot to dangle out there to a bunch of, up and coming defensive position coaches that maybe we have our eye on. Hey, come take this defense for a spin and see if that can enhance your coaching candidacy.
Well, the thing that complicated the situation is what Jimmy Haslam said, which is that, like, he's like, after sort of talking about Jim Schwartz, he's like, he had 4 really good lieutenants that are still here, and then he like made it sound like they're staying.
Yeah.
Now, he was asked in a follow-up about that, and he sort of like backtracked a little bit and was like, I really hope so. Because if your move is to try to like let Jim Schwartz leave and then try to keep this staff largely intact and then add a DC over them, I think that could be a little bit weird. Yeah. I don't know who the person is that wants to do that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but like that's an interesting sort of wrinkle if that's your option. Because look, Jason Tarver predated Jim Schwartz. He was here before Jim Schwartz. And I don't think he's in a hurry to leave Carson Schwarzenegger and potentially Devin Bush again. He has a really good unit. And it doesn't seem like he's in a hurry to go anywhere else. Now, that could change. Jacques Césaire is never going to have a better defensive line than he has right now. So I don't think he's in a big hurry to leave. We'll see about the other guys in terms of, I don't even know if it's a loyalty thing, but like the problem you run into is like Jim Schwartz may not have a job. So are these guys in a hurry to not be employed and be sort of out there doing nothing? Like there's a scenario where, Vic Fangio could retire and Jim Schwartz goes back to the Eagles. Okay, maybe. But if he doesn't, then what? Like, is he going to go be a consultant? Great. You know who that doesn't help? The assistants who are still there. They are just now out of a job or going somewhere else. So I think there's a lot of momentum for those guys to potentially stick around unless, they hire a new defensive coordinator. He just doesn't want them. Which, again, with some of those, I just think that's very unlikely, particularly the two I just mentioned. And I think Ephraim Bands is a really good coach. So I would be surprised if that person was to tell them to leave either. But like, that's sort of the meatball that was left hanging out there with this one is like they're positioning themselves to say, this is a great opportunity for Jim Schwartz if he wants it, and if he doesn't, there's a seemingly better than not chance that they're just going to promote from within or keep the staff largely in place without him, which it might be an additional sort of lever to try to pressure Jim Schwartz.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unless, we create another problem with pissing off whichever defensive assistant doesn't get the defense coordinator job. It's just like it's a process that's just going to keep going and going.
Yeah. I mean, we could get into the idea of like, it's just endlessly, endlessly agreed coaches. But like, I, as I said, I could see a scenario where Banda would be pissed because he's gotten a lot of looks. Tarver's been a DC, but like not really a notable one. And he seems really happy to be a linebackers coach. So we'll see. I have no idea where that's going to go, but at least if Schwartz leaves, you got two in-house candidates that have done it. Is there somebody better? Is there somebody hanging out there that we're not thinking of that makes sense, that wants to run this type of system? Unclear, but it's an interesting choice for Todd Monken because he's trying to put the pressure back on Jim Schwartz. And like, as we tend to see, and saw this with the whole Myles Garrett thing. Like, there were a lot of people that were like, yeah, we're with Myles. And that lasted a very short amount of time before they are ultimately remembering, oh yeah, we're Cleveland Browns fans and we're going to be here with that, whether he is here or not. So ultimately we really want what's best for the team. So I think a lot of people have either already been like, if Jim wants to leave, so be it. Or will turn around and be sort of unhappy with Jim Schwartz in the sense that why are you taking as long as you are, or it's not the end of the world that you didn't get this job. And, there's a small part of this where if Todd Monken, just is terrible, that Jim Schwartz just rolls into the job anyway, which he's not going to get in some of these other places.
Yeah. Well, and look, at the end of the day, it comes down to Schwartz being under contract, being very well paid. I'm sure they'll even kick it up to the $6 million that Flores is getting from Minnesota just to, make him happy if he does choose to return. But this is honestly, for me, this is a non-issue. I think he's a great coach, but I think we have a great defense. And I think that defense translates no matter who's coaching them. And I'm sure they'll find somebody who's, acceptable of the position. And look, Browns fans and the majority of Browns fans that wanted Jim Schwartz, I feel like we got the Jim Schwartz of offense as our head coach. Like it's basically the same guy. It's the same age bracket, the same kind of, like he's a player's coach, but he's also kind of a son of a, like he's salty. I like that, I like he's got a little edge to him.
He has a mentality that I think would be fitting for a defensive coach, but coaching the offensive side of the ball. There's some Bruce Arians in there in terms of his attitude, which is fine. Maybe that's what this team needs. I don't know, but like as long as he can get the offense going, I don't think most people will care. And that's the thing. Like, I think the press conference went well for him. I think people liked what they saw from him.
Yeah.
But they always, for the most part, they always like what they hear from the new head coach. Like, talk to me, in 7 months when, it's week 3 or whatever. How are we feeling at that point? Because if they suck, if they don't win, nobody cares about that stuff. It's like the most overplayed, this gets us meter and all this other stuff. You will love the weird intricacies of a guy or the quirks or whatever. As long as they win, they can be as weird as you want, completely out there in terms of how they handle things. As long as they are, potentially putting you in line for the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And I don't care how nice of a guy, how great of a guy you are. Freddie Kitchens was a really nice guy, like genuinely a really nice guy. Kevin Stefanski, really seemingly nice guy. Nobody cares unless you're winning football games, and they will, get tired of you regardless.
Well, let's go back. I think it was 2021. The Dan Campbell, Nick Sirianni. Wasn't Matt Rule in that class too? And I remember Matt Rule absolutely killed his presser. Yep. And then Sirianni and Campbell were all sorts of painful. They were memes for a solid year after that. Like, it's just, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fun in the moment. You want your guy to, be a good public speaker and captivating and everything like that. But it doesn't mean anything until they get out on the field. So I thought the most interesting thing of this week since Monken's gotten the job, I feel like Baltimore assistants have gone to Todd Monken and not to John Harbaugh. And Pete, I think that's kind of cool. I like the way that looks.
I'll be honest, it's meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless because it was going to happen. Like, so, you know, other than like the associate coach that they hired, which genuinely seems like a coup for them.
That's Daniel Stern, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The adult voice of
Celtic Pride fame.
Yes. Kevin Arnold all grown up. Yeah, look, other than that, like the New York Giants have now hired Matt Nagy as their offensive coordinator. So like, unless Matt Nagy wanted all these guys, it's irrelevant. Like, he was going to hire his own guys. And I don't know that there's any crossover. So like, you're going to win if you're the offensive coordinator. For one thing, he hired them in the first place.
Yeah.
So I sort of understand where people are saying it was like, wow, he got him out from underneath John Harbaugh or whatever. But like, unless
technically it was his staff,
they're his guys. And truer than that, like, he didn't, you know, he has not like cast a huge net out there necessarily, or at least one that we don't know of, because he hired the Ravens offensive line coach, and it seems in the process of hiring several other assistants from the Ravens. Yeah, there's the quarterback's coach is different, although he'd worked with him with Tampa, so it's not like he had no contact with him. It was clearly somebody in his past, but like, for the most part, he's getting guys that he was going to get, because if they aren't here, are they anywhere? Or at least are they getting, like, the offensive coordinator, is Switzer getting an offensive coordinator job? Probably not. So maybe he's getting the same job or potentially lower somebody else. So like, no, it's not a surprise. It's what I would expect in that scenario. If he was hiring, again, whether you're talking about Wonder Years or some of the other coaches that may have no connection to the offensive side of the ball, that's where I think you can sit there and go, okay, that's interesting. Like, the Daniel Stern hire is genuinely interesting, because that was Harbaugh's guy in terms of that's who he was talking to in the box. John Harbaugh has credited him a number of times in terms of like how effective he was. Like, if he was to hire a special teams coach from the Ravens, which I think they retained their guy or whatever, like, that would be notable. But the guys that Todd Monken should get are the offensive guys. I would have been surprised if he lost to those, which would have been pretty alarming.
Well, I thought George Warhop had been in Baltimore longer than Monken. I thought he had been there for a while.
No, unfortunately, the Ravens' previous offensive line coach died in 2023.
Okay.
So Warhop's was there 2024 and 2025, I believe, is the extent of his tenure. So Monken was there once with the previous offensive line coach, I think.
Okay.
1 year with the offensive line coach they had before, and then the two with Warhop.
Okay. Back to the Monken presser, and I mean, not that this is a big deal or not. I found it interesting that he singled out multiple defensive players like Miles and Denzel, Tyson Campbell, Grant Delp, but nobody on offense, and it's just like, I find that interesting that, number one, he didn't touch on any of the rookies. He didn't touch on Joel Bitonio, and with that looming possible retirement and all that stuff, I just found it interesting. Do you think that means anything? I mean, we just talked about how pressers really don't, but I thought that was a curious thing.
Well, one part of that is that's who he was going against. So there's an extended amount of familiarity. The fact you had to prepare for Myles Garrett, you had to prepare for Denzel Ward, Tyson Campbell, obviously, only saw a little bit, but like, you had to prepare for those other guys. So that's the other part. And obviously, it stands out when, the first question is about the quarterback position, and he's suddenly blind. He can, we'll have to feel it out, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I came here because I had to chip 95 and Denzel Ward and Grant Delp.
Not just that, Pete. You just went through a 3-week job interview. You know damn well you've been studying this roster up and down. If he wanted to, he could have pointed out a lot of offensive players. I find that interesting.
The other part about that, to me, is that no one asks him specifically about anything else other than quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm frankly surprised that nobody asked him about like Harold Fannin or just said, what do you think about coming in with this, the rookies you had coming from last year, you saw them
Mm-hmm.
play and all the, like, I think that's more of a function of answering the questions that were asked as opposed to, necessarily not acknowledging them. And then obviously the other part about that was that like he kept talking about building the offense Andrew Berry talked about they're going to be super young. And then he kept saying they're going to build the offense from the ground up. I think that has more to do with it. But nevertheless, the fact that, you noticed that means it stood out. So I'll be curious, where are we by the next press conference? Because they're going to have at least we're about 3 weeks from the next one at the most.
The free agency one, or no, the
combine. I mean, at the very least, he's going to have a combine availability. So unless he's going to do one before that, that's going to be the next opportunity. So, that's the other part about that. The other thing is like, I don't really love questions about specific players.
Yeah.
When the guy's been here 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just like, yes, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward and those guys. Yeah. Like those are entrenched guys and you know who they are because you've been competing against them. But by and large, like, he's asked about the state of the wide receiver room and the offensive line room. It's like, one, he's not going to crush these guys. And two, he's literally not been here. Like, yeah, to your point, you're right. He has been studying this. I mean, the Browns tested him on some of these, like wanted to get answers on how he felt about something, which is really interesting. Like Andrew Berry gave a little bit more, enlightenment on sort of their process because much was made of the whole Shedeur Sanders thing being one of the questions, which I think is overblown and makes for an interesting, like thought exercise, but like doesn't go beyond that for me. But the other than that, like, let him sort of get in there and figure it out because as he said, like his whole focus right now is coaching staff. So I get it. So more than anything, you're like, you're getting the story, you're getting the, how difficult was it here? Never going to happen, all that stuff. And then the other stuff that's like, would have been more interesting. And he gave some of this willingly, thankfully, was just his philosophy on things and like his attitude towards things. Because he touched on some really interesting subjects that I hope get asked about in the future, because he's sort of having a conversation, like was touching on conversations that are being had around the league relative to fourth down and those type of things. Like there are some evolving questions and some sort of, I don't know, arguments, but at least discussions going on in the league relative to, there's people who are like, well, the NFL is going to adjust and, go for it less on fourth down because so many teams were unsuccessful. And one, I don't think that's going to happen. And two, like, the take the points crowd is ignoring, to me, the big factor, which is the implications of both how good field goal kickers are in terms of range, and then two, the ramifications of the new kickoff rule. Because, you kicking a 25-yard field goal and then kicking it, potentially giving it to them on their 40 when, they can get within range in like 3 plays.
Yeah.
It sort of changes your thought process in terms of what when you should go for field goals. And that's to say that like, unless the down and distance is outrageous, like I don't know what the line is, but once you're like inside 30 yards or inside the 30, I think you basically go for it every time because your thought process is like, we have to kick it. And unless our special teams unit is really good, and even if it is, you still may have a slip up and give it to them at the 40. Like there's limited.
Well, what's your distance, Pete? Because you say you go for it every time. What's your distance? Like anything 4th and 3 and under, 4th and 5 and under? Like what's your cutoff with that?
That, I mean, obviously that's going to get into, your comfort level and some of the other factors. I think it has more to do with range. Like if you're kicking from, 40 plus, then you may as well, because if you miss it, like you may as well kick it. Like there's more value to it because you're farther away. And if you miss, you're giving them the ball basically where the kickoff would end up. But like if you're that close and you don't make it and you've got a really good defense like the Browns do, or a lot of these teams do, okay, then they're on their own 10.
Yeah.
Like there's a net 30-yard difference that's sort of worth theoretically the 4 points at least 3 points you're trying to get in that. So like the idea is like, well, so many teams went on fourth down and missed it in crucial situations. And it like you could have that reaction, and there may be some that do, but I think ultimately you'd be like, okay, but if I kick the field goal and then they're back here in 3 plays, what did I really accomplish? Like,
yeah. Well, you're going to see a reaction to whatever happens.
Yeah.
If the team goes for it and misses it, you're going to take the points crowd and vice versa. But
I like the fact that, and obviously it's just using this as sort of example is, the defense gets a stop on 4th and 2. Like, you're not done. We're not getting off the field. And I hope he sticks with that, because that's what I desperately want, is to be super aggressive on 4th down and super aggressive on trying to get points. And it sounds like, this is the other thing, sort of funny part with this is I haven't seen a ton of this, but there were some people who were like, yeah, Todd Monken, he's old school. He's not going to care about analytics. It's like Todd Monken is one of the biggest nerds there is in terms of numbers, and then hired a guy, which I thought was really funny with the way that like the media people were talking about it, like they avoided the word analytics, and then you pulled up this old Kyle Brandt clip and describes him as analytics wizard, and I'm just thinking, oh man, there's gonna be people who just absolutely hate this.
Yeah, no, I mean that's anytime analytics comes in, people get their hair in a bunch. So it's funny. I was going over stuff today, and I wanted to make a list of players on the Browns offense who are going to benefit from Monken's presence versus the ones that might not. And then it kind of occurred to me that like he will adapt to whatever we have, so it's like, it's not necessarily how our players going to fit. I'm interested to see the players that we add, right? Because I feel like he's already said as much. Like, he's going to figure out his offense based on the players that he has in the locker room. And we're going to get a huge influx of talent. I mean, what did Andrew Berry say? It's going to like drastic overhaul the offense or something along those lines today. I don't know. Basically, like everything we've done on defense the last 2 off seasons is going to be on offense this off season. So it's like, it's interesting to see what direction they're going to go.
First, we'll see. If he comes out and grabs a whole bunch of defensive players, I'm going to lose my goddamn mind. Yeah. But no, this is what's really interesting about the whole Todd Monken hire, because Todd Monken, to his credit, like there are people who've tried to like trash this hire, and for whatever reason, and like I wrote about this when it happened, like all these people were like treating Todd Monken like he was a bum, when his previous 4 years were back-to-back national titles, Lamar Jackson MVP, most prolific rushing offense ever, and should have won the MVP again, but people felt bad for Josh Allen for whatever reason. And then like they don't play well because Lamar Jackson's hurt. They have other issues that go on with the offensive line stuff. And like, I don't understand, like, why wasn't like Detroit, for example, being like, Todd Monken, come be our offensive coordinator. Like, we will throw whatever at you, or some of these other teams. And maybe it was just he was so attached to John Harbaugh that like maybe he was telling them he wasn't interested, but I'm just surprised there wasn't a massive demand for this given what he's done. So to the point, and Jimmy Haslam raised it, and Andrew Berry touched on it, but like Jimmy Haslam really laid it out there in terms of being good with Stetson Bennett to Lamar Jackson with some other guys thrown in between, including 2 former Browns quarterbacks, which was interesting. He threw that in there with Jameis Winston and Nick Mullins. But like, he's been able to get the offense to work with whatever. You give him pieces, he'll figure it out. And I don't know that he's been in a situation since he was the coach of Southern Miss where he's been in a situation where he gets to sort of choose. He has, and even at Southern Miss, it's Southern Miss. It's not like he was at, big power for top of the line school where he could just get what he wanted necessarily. Yeah. I mean, you're still sort of restricted in terms of what was supplied. So So you run into the Browns, and now you sit here and go, well, I've got Harold Finn, I've got Quinshon Judkins, I've got Jerry Jeudy. and everything else is sort of up for grabs. So like, I'm genuinely fascinated to see, and obviously there's an element to this where it depends on what's really available.
Yeah.
And it could change like from 2026 to 2027 if they get like a quarterback they really like we may see that alter. Now I think there's going to be sort of a range of things he's comfortable with. I think he has a giant playbook. It's just a question of which part of it he operates from. But like, I want to know, it's a choose your own adventure for Todd Monken. And I'm very curious to see what's the choice he makes. And it like, even with the 6th pick of the draft, like obviously everybody knows where I stand in terms of saying Mekhi Lemon, but like even the choice between theoretically Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate is really interesting because he may have a specific vision for what he wants to do. And this is the first opportunity he truly gets to realize it, which was noted in the press conference by he and Andrew Berry in terms of like getting to really do this. That's going to be really fun to watch. Now, or I should say, hopefully fun to watch, but at the very least, it's going to be a really interesting process. It also makes them annoyingly unpredictable in certain respects, which could be really fun, but also can make it a little bit difficult to prognosticate.
Yeah, that's one thing that I can say. Our boy Jack Duffin at the OBR has absolutely crushed for the duration of Andrew Berry's stay in Cleveland. He seems to be. I mean, people think he's a burner account half the time. So I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see what his style is ultimately going to be. What type of player does he gravitate towards? What type of player does he like? What type of player does he want to bring in? And we've talked about. I mean, obviously, everybody talks about last year being the year that really saved Andrew Berry's career in Cleveland. I don't think Andrew Berry is nearly as bad at drafting as people make him out to be. I think the first thing that people tag him with is Jed Wills. And don't get me wrong, I hated that pick at the time. I was a Tristan Wirfs guy. But like that was the COVID year. That was a weird kind of wonky year. And there was a lot of strange stuff in that offseason. The next year with Newsom and JOK was solid, and then you had the trade. So it's like he went 3 years with no first-round picks. He lost his second-round pick in one of those years. They traded it in another year. So it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like Isaiah McGuire. I feel like DeJuan Jones before he got hurt. I feel like Martin Emerson. I feel like he's found some guys in those middle rounds that if you had a first-rounder that was solid, like that draft looks a hell of a lot better.
Well, I think the other decision makers that have sort of been like sort of called to the mat this past couple of weeks have sort of amplified the fact that Andrew Berry's not nearly as bad of a drafter as people want him to be. And like I've seen Check the Mic talk about this as well. Like everybody thinks their GM sucks at drafting. Yeah. Everybody. Yeah. And we've talked about this. Everybody hates their head coach most of the time. Mm-hmm. All these other things.
Quarterback's overrated.
Like Brandon Beane's draft record, it's not good. Like, or I should say it's like pretty much like even a notch below Andrew Berry. And it's like the same issues, like in complaints. We can't find a wide receiver, and his wide receivers are bad. Or the 49ers like losing and like looking at John Lynch's draft stuff, and it's not good. They have found players at some spots, but like the early picks are a nightmare.
And a lot of their contracts have been nightmares.
But like, obviously Trey Lance was a huge one, but like they have not done well with their early picks. I mean, he took Solomon Thomas, who I really liked, and obviously there's tragedy involved in some of what happened with him. Reuben Foster, those were their 2 first-round picks. Like they got nothing out of that. So like there's a lot of GMs like that have been largely okay. And Andrew Berry was average until this past year where he crushed it. And then like people have either tried to devalue it or tried to make that like the expectation. Like it's an insanely good draft in terms of like, obviously they've got to sustain and be good. Yeah. Like it can't be a 1-year wonder thing, but like if Harold Fannin is just as good as he was this past year, and Quinshon Judkins is just as good as he was this past year, and Carson Schwartz was just like, you go down the line, like they don't have to get better, and some of them hopefully will, but they don't have to get any better, and they're going to be awesome with this group. And Mason Graham is tremendously gifted. He's only going to get better. hopefully Dylan Sampson becomes a bigger part of the offense, and hopefully they give him some blocking and some stuff. And like, if one of these quarterbacks figures it out, then it's like one of the all-time drafts.
Yeah,
but even if they
I was just going to say, if that happens, it's an all-timer. Absolutely.
Yeah, so like, this is the thing. So one, I think Andrew Berry's on firmer ground than other people do, but obviously if they blow this, then he's gonna be in trouble. And like when Jimmy Haslam says to the press conference, he's got to get us players. Like there's a pretty clear message there. But I think 2023 is where the Browns started figuring out the draft. And I've said this all along, like it is not if you get really lucky, like the Washington Commanders did in their first year, more power to you. They crushed it. They got a top level quarterback at the second pick. Obviously, he's been hurt this year, which again, this is the thing you got to sustain.
Yeah.
They got a really good tackle at the third round. Like they did some really good stuff. But like for the most part, and Howie Roseman's a really good example of this, it takes time to sort of figure out how to do this really, really well. You get certain elements really right and miss on other elements and have to figure those things out. But I think 2023 is the year where like it started coming into place and they didn't have the picks, but like the lower picks were better. They made more sense. And then the way they've been able to utilize undrafted free agents has been a huge benefit for the way they've sort of, gotten extra value out of these drafts. So like, I'm really excited to see this. Now, it'd really help if just Andrew Berry just, takes my advice and just does what I want. Like we'll be there. But like, still, I think this draft sets up really well. And the one thing the Browns, I think, have gotten largely right, other than the quarterback position in terms of like scheduling, like they've gotten pretty good at sort of understanding what a draft has and what it doesn't have. So like Mason Graham, I think is going to be far and away better than anyone, like as a prospect, is far and away better than any defensive tackle in this class.
Yeah.
It's not a good running back class. So what did the Browns say? They took 2 last year. Like
I was just going to say, Dylan Sampson's probably a 2nd or 3rd round pick in this draft.
Like they've largely done well at sort of figuring out what a draft has and what it doesn't have. And yes, we're going to sit here and go, well, they should have done this and that and all these other things. But there's certain positions that are never weak. Wide receiver has never had a weak class. Like it just doesn't happen. There were a whole lot of people coming in this class, man. This class is going to suck. Wait till 2027. And like, here we are. And 3 in the top 10 would not shock me. I think at least one's going in the top 5. And I think 2 will like hopefully go in the top 6. So like that, even that has changed, but like this is the one that's a little bit tougher. Offensive line, we sit there and go, because a lot of people, and I think when evaluators were looking at this, I think they were really talking about the top guys and going, man, this class is disappointing. Yeah. It's not really delivering what we hoped. And that's true. It bears out in the sense that everybody's sort of looking at this and going, there's not a top 10 offensive lineman. Okay, but here's what we've seen the last couple of weeks, between all-star games and people sort of really diving into the film and figuring out who these guys are, the supply seems to be ample relative to the top 50. And the Browns just happen to have 3 picks in the top 50. So if they take a receiver at the top and can get 2 linemen, they're going to be in pretty good shape from that standpoint. So like that's an underrated element of this, being able to sort of, you're obviously planning for the year you're drafting now, but you do at least have an eye on what's coming up. Now, obviously the quarterback position's the sticky wicket that's sort of being thrown in here, like where I'm looking at this going, do not draft a quarterback this year and wait for 2027. But like, It doesn't feel good. But nevertheless, I think that's the best path forward.
Yeah, and Mr. McLothan in the chat just brought up Tyler Linderbaum and free agency, and I can tell you right now, McLothan, Pete and I are both on board with that bad boy. Speaking of Ravens free agents, Pete, you got you got 2 tight ends. You got Isaiah Likely and you got Charlie Kohler. I think Kohler might be a pretty good fit for us. I think he's a little more in line, right? A little bit bigger, and
he doesn't catch the ball. He doesn't. They don't throw him the ball. He's there to do one thing. He's there to be almost 6'6" and 260 and run block people. He will occasionally catch a dump off. Like, what's interesting is like, if you're somebody, like, God knows there's enough Ohio State fans who are Browns fans who are like, man, I love Will Kazmarek. Charlie Kohler is the NFL version of that. Like, and I could see a scenario where the Browns basically don't sign Charlie Kolar because if they think he's tight end 3, then they're like, well, we don't really want to pay a ton of money for the third tight end if they want to get a starter, whether it's Njoku or something else. But like, he's that guy. Now, I think there are guys that you can get a little bit more out of that position, which is what I'd err on. But like, if you're asking me in free agent and, Charlie Kolar is there for a very reasonable contract, sign me up, because you're trying to instill an attitude with that type of move as much as anything. And obviously they need inline help and getting, potentially an upgrade over the White Harts and those type of guys. Not that they're bad players, but like that they're just not this, and this having a very specific thing. And this is what happens with these things. Like, new coach comes in. This is why, this notion that like there are players on the team that weren't invested in Kevin Stefanski like this, because this is what happens. New coach comes in and goes, well, I've got a guy and he wants to come here. And Charlie Kolar is like, well, nobody's going to give me a ton of money. So this is a place where I can get, I know I'm going to get a job. I know what they're going to ask me to do. Okay, sign me up. I think he's a good fit for that. The other guy, and not that he has an extensive career with the Ravens, but I think Joe Noteboom, the veteran tackle, could be sort of in that mix if they don't re-sign Cam Robinson, or even if they do, to get another.
What about the big guard that you hate so much?
Which
Daniel Falele?
No. He is Daniel Falele by everybody he plays against. No, not interested. Does nothing for me. I genuinely found that pick confusing. Or not the pick, the putting him at guard element. Just nothing about him seemed to be a guard to me. But obviously, to your point about Linderbaum, love it. Love the idea of doing it. That's going to be the one where I sit here and go, okay, what does Tyler Linderbaum want? Does he like playing for Todd Monken? Does he like George Warhop? And does he like money? Because the Browns now have all of those things. He can set right in and be in a really good position to hopefully. And the thing that I don't know, but I'd like to find out with him is Tyler Linderbaum that guy in terms of being able to really run the front? Can he take control and be the leader of that group? Because that's part of the appeal for me. If they're going to, get a bunch of younger players, draft a bunch of guys, I need somebody to be the captain of that boat and take care of it. Now, the other guy that mentioned is Patrick Ricard. It's going to be a really interesting, thought process on this whole thing, because this is where you sit here and go, okay, does Todd Monken really care about this? Or was it just, I have Patrick Ricard on my team, I'm going to use him? Yeah. It would not shock me at all if Patrick Ricard actually follows John Harbaugh and goes to New York, if that's what they want to do. Or, because this is what seems to happen, he goes to Los Angeles and plays for Jim Harbaugh because he's that hard-nosed guy. I will be very curious to see, this is the experiment, because Todd Monken has done air raid stuff. He's done, obviously, that power style offense. He's done all these things. So now, again, we're in a situation of, what does he want to do? Does he want a Patrick Ricard? And my suspicion is probably not. Not because Patrick Ricard's a bad player. I just don't think you necessarily prioritize that in terms of your money or resources or whatever. Now, the other thing that could sort of work in his favor, I suppose, is if the Browns are sort of like, well, we don't have a whole lot of things we want to do right this season, so we can bring him in and bring him as a weapon. But Andrew Berry talked about, they're going to be one of the youngest teams. I will be very surprised if the Browns are the youngest team in the league next year. Green Bay is super young. But if that's the thought process, then I don't know if Patrick Ricard makes a whole lot of sense for that. And if you're not getting Patrick Ricard, I'm not going to sit here and go, well, we got to go find a fullback. Yeah. Patrick Ricard was a really good opportunity for the Ravens when they got him. He was a defensive lineman.
He's an offensive guard. It's a joke. He's like 320.
Well, I mean, he was at Maine. He was a defensive tackle, and he's played defensive tackle for the Ravens. But that was a great opportunity. If there's an opportunity for we may come in and Monken's like, what do I need him for? I love Aiden Huntington for that. I don't know, but those are the things where I think it's too easy to assume, and then I think some people will be surprised when the Browns don't necessarily follow that path.
Yeah, I always assume that a new coaching staff or at least a new staff on a certain side of the ball, you're going to want one of your guys in just about every room, just to help. just to help, just to be almost a coach's assistant on the field. Just somebody that knows the lingo, knows the language, knows the coach, and can, help just kind of break everything down for everybody. I mean, it's just that's common practice in the NFL.
Well, especially when you're getting to third and fourth, the third string guys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just getting depth, and you're getting depth, and depth like that may not have an opportunity elsewhere. Like, they're your guys in the same sense that it wouldn't shock me if the Browns start releasing some guys or whatever, like in the same range, and they go to Atlanta, like, because there's a familiarity there, and the sense of, this is who I know. I know, what they need me to do. I'm comfortable in it. This is sort of where I'm going to be at my best. All those things work in your favor. So if you're like, again, Charlie Kolar, for example, and you're trying to get a bigger payday, beyond this, if the market's not what you hope it would be, go to where you're comfortable and can sort of help you, put you in a mindset of play your best. And then hopefully you get to cash in on the next contract.
All right. So rounding out the remaining coaching staffs, or the coaching hires, I should say, we got Mike LaFleur in Arizona, and we've got Clint Kubiak. Apparently, it's nothing official yet, but the word on the street is that Kubiak's going to take over the Raiders. So Robert Saleh was the only minority hired this coaching cycle, and are you surprised by that? Are you disappointed in that? I mean, what? Do you think that's a thing, or is it just basically a non-issue? It just didn't happen this time.
It's a thing because it's 10%. Like, that's terrible. I'm not going to sit here and go, any one team failed.
Yeah.
But the league obviously looks at this and goes, it's not working like the way we want. And like, the Browns, to their credit, were one of the few, maybe the only team. I don't know how many teams can say this, because there were teams that interviewed for the Rooney Rule, knowing exactly who they were going to hire in the New York Giants and Atlanta Falcons, like, as examples. Like, they interviewed these guys, but they knew who they were gunning for. So it became a token interview. Now, maybe there's some value in it. I don't see Antonio Pierce getting a job anywhere. In fact, is he getting a job anywhere? Like,
I haven't seen it.
Like, Raheem Morris is at least going to be defensive coordinator for like San Francisco 49ers. And like, but like, the Browns were at least honest to that. Like, Nate Scheelhaase had a legit shot at the job. Maybe it was too early. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe they will revisit if this thing doesn't work. I don't know. My hope, just from a Browns-centric standpoint, my hope is that the Browns have credibility for people who are trying to be head coaches, because they do take them seriously. Obviously, you hired Hugh Jackson. Say what you will about him, but it was a black coach. You hire Andrew Berry. At one point, you had a all black front office in terms of your major elements, with Andrew Berry, Glenn Cook, and then Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And then obviously when Kwesi left, you hire a woman, which is its own sort of different dynamic. Like, there are any number of people who cannot stand Catherine Hickman for no other reason than she's a woman, even so she's really, really smart. So the Browns have been on the forefront. I think they earn some credibility. And my hope is that, we'll see how long this Todd Monken thing is. My hope is that we're going to get into a situation where, like, whether it's assistants, whether it's whatever, that like minority candidates and specific, and specifically go, the Browns, the Browns are not in a great situation, and hopefully they will be in a better one the next time they're hiring something. But like, they're going to take me seriously. Like, they're going to give me a shot, and I have a real meaningful opportunity to become a whatever coordinator, front office person, head coach. Like, I'm hoping that's what happened. Will it? I don't know. But like, because perfect world would be like, the Browns start, in the way that Tony Dungy's Bucks did, was you basically took advantage of like this underserved community and got a brilliant coaching staff because nobody else was hiring these guys. Yeah. So I'm curious to see, how this thing sort of works itself out over the process. But like, it's a problem for the NFL, even if it's like no specific process was necessarily a bad one. And the other part about this is like, it comes down to where, it's not the head guys that are necessarily the problem. The head coaches are a symptom of the problem. The problem is that the NFL and colleges are not hiring minority candidates to be offensive coaches. They're almost always put on the defensive side of the ball. And then what do we see? Very few defensive guys are getting head coaching opportunities. So it's all offensive guys. So if you're not hiring anybody to be an offensive coordinator at any level, they aren't going to be in like the mix, other than like occasionally, like Vance Joseph was obviously a candidate for a couple of jobs, or Raheem Morris was a candidate for a couple of jobs. But like, as long as the NFL is like, man, everybody wants an offensive coach, then like you have to find a way to get more people on the offensive side of the ball that are minorities, and specifically black coaches, to get. Unfortunately, that's sort of where we're at. And like, I can't hate the NFL because, you know, as much as I can say I don't like where the NFL is in terms of its hiring practices, I also sat here going, yeah, I really like an offensive coach. As much as I see the advantages of getting that guy if they can do all those things, because like you see the advantage some of these teams have by having a entrenched offensive guy who calls the plays and all this stuff. So I can't hate on the incentives to say that the benefit of an offensive coach, but I do think it's important to hire at every level more minorities on offensive staffs, guys in position to call plays, design an offense. You know, obviously we are seeing Eric Bieniemy go back to the Chiefs, but nobody's going to give him a head coaching job ever. Yeah. So like we need more representation in that. And it can't just be, well, the running backs coach or the wide receiver coach. Like you need quarterbacks coaches. You need, and some are out there, like Thad Lewis is out there, but like there's just not enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like one, not issue that I have with the rule, but one thing that I think is a problem with the rule. These aren't just like decisions that are made on a whim, right? Like these teams thoughtfully plan these processes out. They're going to go into these things with candidates in mind that they want to hire. They're going to naturally have a list of, okay, I really want this guy. I'm intrigued by this guy, this, that, and the other. So it's like everybody outside of who their true goal is technically just a token interview if they can get their guy. You know what I mean? So it's like I have a hard time with that. I think the rule is good because it gets guys exposure. It gets guys in the process of these interviews and to, you know, just get more comfortable with it and to, you know, advance themselves better that way and just basically make themselves better candidates for the future, even if they don't get the job in this cycle. But to your point, I mean, yeah, like it's tough because there aren't a lot of minority offensive coaches out there, especially ones that are generating enough buzz to be in the head coaching cycle. And that's where the league is going. So it's just like it's a slippery slope. It's tough.
Yeah, I think Nate Scheelhaase is going to be an NFL head coach, but like that's not enough relative to this hiring cycle we just went through.
Yeah, agreed. Well, going back to the hiring cycle and everything that and the 10 teams that named a new head coach, is there one that stands out in a positive way and or one that stands out in a negative way to you? Obviously, Brown's excluded. That's the best.
I have no idea if like, because the thing is, I just don't know enough. Yeah. But like, I don't feel good about Clint Kubiak going to the Raiders. I just don't like. Fernando Mendoza is really good. Yeah. I think he could be a really good quarterback, but like that division is awful. Or for you, I mean, it is tremendously gifted for those three other teams. That is a nightmare scenario to walk into. And I just don't know how that's going to work itself out fast enough. We'll see. Maybe that one's going to be good. Like he's a really good play caller and really good designer and all those things. But I just don't like the Raiders' job. I don't really like, you know, I don't know why Mike LaFleur is going to Arizona right now. Like it feels like he should have waited a year. And again, that's not because he's not a good coach. I don't know if he is or not. I just don't love that situation. Like, what are you going to do at quarterback? Are you just going to try to resign Jacoby Brissett and be like, this is our guy? I don't know. The other one, have no strong feeling about anyway, and just sort of like, okay, is the Miami Dolphins?
Jeff Hafley? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Jeff Hafley of
Yeah.
with the Dolphins. Like, he's a good coach relative to defense and all that stuff, but like, it's just a weird setup. And
Yeah.
it's just Miami's a very weird team right now, and maybe he's going to get a direction, but it just feels like they have to do a whole lot of tearing down before they go anywhere.
Yeah. And that's what I think they might ultimately do, is tear things down. I mean, there's word is they might even ultimately just cut 2 of this offseason and let him go and just eat the money and all that other stuff. All right, well, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's look towards the future. Let's talk a little Senior Bowl, okay? I've got a list of some winners and not losers, but some guys that up their stock a little bit this past week. I would love to get your take on it.
Okay.
We're going to start. I already know how you feel about this guy. Tell me about the defensive end from Illinois, Gabe Jacques.
I think it's pronounced Yakis, which
Jacques?
is as opposed to being jackass. Gabe Jacques is like 6'3", 270. At Illinois, he had 11 sacks. The next guy had 2. Which
This
is
season?
His market share is outrageous. Last year he had like 8.5, and the next guy had like 4. So he's incredibly productive. The only thing that like hurts him a little bit, I think he's got relatively short arms, which isn't necessarily the end of the world, but length is sort of a big deal for defensive ends. So if not for that, I think he'd be in the first round. I think he's going to go in the top 50, and I think he's better than some of the prospects that are being talked about as first round guys. Like, he's just really, really good. And it's one of those things where I think, there's an element to the edge position where I think a lot of teams look at the wrong things in terms of what's important. And like, that's the element that's more important. Gabe Jacques is just a production monster. And ultimately that's what matters in terms of, you've got 11 guys on defense. Who's the guy they really got to worry about? Who's the guy they know they have to stop and then still don't? It's Gabe Jacques. So he's really good. He's a guy where if you were to get really greedy, and I mean extremely greedy, because there's actually a guy I like a little bit later who I would take on in the Senior Bowl if the Browns were saying, hey, we desperately want a defensive end we don't need. It would be the kid from Penn State who's like the prototype
Danny
in terms
Dennis,
of
right?
Huh?
Danny Dennis, right? What's
yes. Yeah. He like, in terms of how you build a defensive end, like, he's basically perfect. And then he was super productive. Went from Abdul Carter's like the other guy to he's 270 pounds, all real 270, weighed in. And then he's really, really good. And I don't think he had the most incredible week, but like, I don't care. And this is the other part. Just as a thing to point out, I watch the stuff. I watch the practice reps. I will sort of be like, okay, that's interesting. But a lot of mistakes happen by overvaluing Senior Bowl performances, because you can scam the league right now.
Yeah.
And there are a couple candidates for this where you basically either don't play all season or you don't play very well. And then you come out and for a week, every day is your Super Bowl, which is great. Like, cool. But like, we've seen that. Like, one of the all-time dominant Senior Bowl performances I've ever seen was Cedric Ellis when he came out of USC.
Yep.
He smoked dudes all week, and then wasn't that good. Or there've been particularly that position, defensive tackle, and is one of those positions.
Did the Saints take him in the top 10?
9. He was dominant, but like. So you come out here and there are a couple of guys like I'll use the the kid from Florida,
Banks.
Caleb Banks basically did not play this year, and then goes out and smokes dudes. And I'm seeing all these people stock up.
Top 10. I saw a mock with the Bengals taking him at 10,
and I'm just like, listen, maybe he's that good. Maybe he's again another guy who's just the prototype.
6'6", 330. That is
like arms and all the things you look for in big hands, long arms, all these things that like suggest really good things in terms of just the build. But if he goes in the NFL and just like doesn't care, you've still given him like however many $1 million for that pick, and you're not getting it back. So like, and I'll contrast that against like Tyron Montgomery, who was a guy who was like, Casey Concepcion and some other guys dropped out, and they go, we're inviting Tyron Montgomery from John Carroll. Most people, one of the things that genuinely stunned me is how many people don't know where John Carroll is. And that sounds weird, I know, to be like, why would anyone know where John Carroll is? Because the coaches and like the amount of front office people who've come out of this college are like, they have their own network. Like when you graduate from John Carroll, like there are people who will find you jobs and stuff. Like it is a very tight-knit community. So I'm confused that I'm genuinely sort of stunned. Obviously I live in Ohio and all these things and watch football, but like all these people are like, I had to look up where John Carroll was. I'm just sort of baffled by that. But regardless, you're still going there. Tyron Montgomery's invited to the senior bowl. You're like, who? And then you obviously crushed it.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like if that sends you back to the tape and maybe he goes in the round 5, okay, because the risk isn't like as significant. Like, so it's really interesting when you talk about, well, he should go top 10 and stuff, and people overreact to everything. And like, what's really funny to me, and this happens at all these events, like when we get to the combine, you'll have somebody go, I'm not going to overreact. We shouldn't, don't go nuts over this stuff. And then somebody will run. So, oh my God, first round time.
Turn in the card.
Give all the picks. Like there are the usual suspects every time who are like, hey, the fast guy I thought was going to run fast really ran fast. So now it counts as double. And it just, that's one of those things where I just like, yeah, he was supposed to run fast. Cool. Like this is how this goes.
All right. Well, so that's our boy Gabe Yakas. Let's move on. This is Max Ihanachor. I'll tell you, Pete, I feel like this kid's got the 24th pick all over him.
Wow, 24. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's big, strong, athletic, and Nigerian. So, like, I'm in. The only question you have with him is small hands. He's got everything else. And
That's
sit here and
good.
go,
He's less likely to hold. It's perfect.
Yeah, well, you like sit there and go, well, why do hands matter? Like, why does hand size matter for a tackle? And it's room for error. You have to be more precise in terms of your hand placement when you have smaller hands. You got big old mitts. You can sort of be a little bit less precise. So I'm really intrigued by him. And I've seen like Fran Duffy, who covers the Eagles and does draft stuff, who keeps annoyingly linking to the Eagles, because what I'd really like to do is get him at 39. And I don't know if that's going to happen anymore, but he's interesting. Now, the thing is, he's not done. He is not a finished product. He had a good week, great stuff. But like, this is what I'm talking about. I think people overreact a little bit too much for this. I think top 50 is fine. I'll be very curious to see if he continues to his ascent. And if he does get into the back of the first round, I'm not saying it won't happen, because like with that position, offensive line, defensive line, it happens. It happens a lot. And you're sitting there going, man, we want tools and we want to be able to work with them. But I'm hoping it's more like 39, because I'd like to get somebody else at 24. But like that's sort of the quandary with a guy like Max Ihanachor, because he, for people who don't know, Max Ihanachor, Nigerian immigrant who grew up playing soccer and playing basketball. So he has three real years of football to his name at this point. That's it. So like that cuts two ways. On the one hand, you go, oh man, world of potential, because he's so new at this. He hasn't been in the league very long, or hasn't been in the game very long. So he's going to get better and better and better. That may be true. And there's an element to this where he hasn't learned maybe he hasn't learned bad habits, which could also be really good. The flip side is that like he's inexperienced and there's going to be growing pains. And particularly when going to the NFL, if you're sitting there going, well, I can insert him right into the starting lineup, he's going to suddenly be dealing with veterans who know how to use their hands, who have a bunch of tricks, who have a whole arsenal of moves. And this guy hasn't seen any of it yet. And you get ahead of yourself a little bit. So that's where I sort of am cautious in terms of, yes, I understand why people are excited. He's really good. In fact, watching the Senior Bowl, I think he should have won Senior Bowl MVP. He was crushing people on the first couple drives as a run blocker, and they kept putting him out in space. and he was really, really good and helped the one-sided game. I think it was the North team or whatever, American or whatever the hell, just smoke the other team. And he was a huge part of that. So I get it. Like he's really impressive. Again, I think I would have named Hanachor Senior Bowl MVP, but like I think people have to be a little bit more cautious in terms of being like, man, he's ready to insert the starting lineup, because I don't think he's there yet. I think it's going to take him a little bit to sort of figure out the league and get more experience. And I'm hoping, if George Warhop's the guy to do that, that would be great to coach him up and teach him. And hopefully he's like, a guy who wants to be coached and is like hungry to learn. Then I'm all for it. But he's not. There are guys I'm hoping for at 24 before him.
Okay, and that's reasonable. I will say I've been seeing, and obviously their mock drafts, they don't matter, but I've been seeing Spencer Fano and Mawanoa moving up into the top 5, top 10, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I know.
Well, it's just I just think it's no. Look, beyond that, like mock drafts are going to change dramatically once people go to the combine. And I think the reality that's going to set in is like you're going to hear over and over and over, I don't see a top 10 lineman in this. And I think that there's going to be a just now. There's still some teams that could take a tackle. The Browns are certainly one of them, but like, and this is the thing, like people advocate for this position and be like, you have to take the best lineman or whatever, even if they're not like great. But the person who's advocating for that position is then going to turn around and be mad at the Browns for doing it if it means passing over guys who are not stars elsewhere. And you go, you took the wide receiver or whatever, if Caleb Downs is the Hall of Famer and all this other stuff, and you took a average tackle at 6, like don't tell me, like the person who's going, well, you just have to take an offensive lineman is not going to then come back and go, well, why'd you take an average offensive lineman at 6? Like, this will happen. So like, it's one of those things where I get why people advocate this position, but like, just understand how this plays out. If you pass a bunch of stars, you're going to be mad.
Well, okay, just to give you a little pushback on this, Pete, I feel like you can make that same argument about wide receiver. I like Carnell Tate. I like Mekhi Lemon, but you've noted it multiple times. Mekhi Lemon's 5'11", sub 200. He's going to run a 4.5. So that's not your typical pick for a wide receiver in the top 10. And the way I see it, offensive tackle's safe, man, especially if you get to a certain talent level, certain production level. It's a moderately safe pick. And if you've got a top half of a first round that is short on a lot of superstars, then I think it makes sense to take an offensive tackle. That, it might be a reach in better years, but in this particular year, that's a top 10 caliber tackle.
All right. Well, beyond the people who then tell you Carnell Tate is a superstar, there is a particular number that stands out when it comes to Mekhi Lemon. He averages, for his college career, not just this season, for his career, 3 yards per route run, both against man and against zone. There are, I think, 6 guys who've done that since 2021. One of them is Jamar Chase. One of them is Devontae Smith. One of them is Jalen Waddle. One of them is JSN. And one of them is D. Eskridge. And D. Eskridge was in the MAC and was old.
He was like
he was 24, 24, 25. All those other guys are superstars. They're not just good. They are the stars. Mekhi Lemon is in that category of guy in terms of
I'm a Mekhi fan, Pete. I'm just giving you pushback on the position thing.
I agree with you, but like I get what you're saying, but like to me, one, I think you have to sort of reevaluate the way we're talking about it. And beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, like, I'm not suggesting Amon-Ra St. Brown based on coming out was a top 10 pick. Yeah. But if you were to reverse it and know what you have, you take them in the top 10 without thinking about it. And then the other element is obviously what we're seeing from the Puka Nakuas of the world in terms of how they're playing the position. And JSN to a lesser extent, because JSN's a little bit more versatile in terms of his inside-outside versatility, but they condense him a lot. I
feel like JSN's got a little more juice too.
Not straight line. But his agility is insane, like otherworldly three cone and shuttle. Like that stuff was legit elite level. So I don't know if Lemon's going to get that, but like that's where I sit here and go, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the right comp. And if you're telling me you can get that, it should be an easy question. Whereas I get what you're saying, and then I'll just say Jed Wells. Also, but again, it really comes down to supply. I think if you take a receiver at 6, you're still going to be in a situation you get 2 up. You could get 1 at 24 and 1 at 39 and feel good about it. There are enough guys in that range that I think the Browns can come away with 2 guys and be really happy with it.
Well, and the thing is too, Pete, looking at our wide receiver room, and to your point, we need a number 1. And that's a guy that we're going to get at 6. We're not going to get later than 20, probably, given this draft and who all's going to be available. So I understand your stance on that completely, and I tend to agree with you. Looking at our wide receiver depth chart, look, Jerry Jeudy is a number 2. I think Cedric Tillman could be a 3rd receiver. He's not a slot, obviously, but he could be a 3rd receiver, right? Everybody else is 4, 5, 6.
He can condense, though. Say what he blocks like a dude. They put him in wing. He pulls. I like
Cedric Tillman. He just can't.
No, I know, but I'm like, this is one of the things that's really interesting. And I'm not saying that the Browns would be like, well, we're not going to draft an outside receiver because Cedric Tillman is out there. Yeah. But if you sit here and go, Jerry Jeudy can play inside or out. Cedric Tillman is largely an X, or an outside receiver at the very least. And Isaiah Bond is largely, you can put him anywhere, but realistically, he's an outside receiver, especially if we're going to make a sort of comparison, if he becomes Devontae Walker for the Browns, like Monken had for the Ravens, I don't know how much you're going to put him inside. Not to say you can, but like it's sort of easy to naturally fit in Mekhi Lemon easier than Carnell Tate. Now, having said that, they may just be like, Carnell Tate is just that good, and I don't care. And like that's what a 6th pick in the draft should be anyway. You sit here and go, I want that guy, and we'll figure out the rest later.
Yeah. Well, no, I can agree with that. All right, so back to my list here. So I got 4 more names on this list. I've got 1 tight end and I've got 3 receivers because I want this to be moderately Brown centric, right? I got Kevin Coleman from Missouri. What's your take on that guy?
Kevin Coleman is a slot receiver. He has an okay profile. It's not great, but I think where you'd get him, I think would be reasonable. If you were to take a guy like, if let's say you took Tate and you're like, well, I want to come back and get another guy, then that would be somebody who like stands out and is fine. I just don't know, and like maybe you're okay with that. I think he's more of a role player as opposed to a standout.
Day 3 guy?
Probably.
All right. How about Malachi Fields from Notre Dame? He's a big kid.
Yeah. And you know what? He's going to go in the first round, and I'm going to sit there and go, I'm glad it's not us.
Really?
He is. He's not a bad player. He's just not going to be that guy.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a number 1 receiver out of him. Maybe he's going to be a high-level number 2. I'm not sure he's even going to be that. His production's okay. There are things about his profile that are really good, and his size is impressive, and that's what's going to get him in the first round.
Yeah.
He is going to 6'4", 226 or whatever. He's a beast in terms of that. But does he play that consistently? Not really.
Does he play to that size?
Yeah, I mean, these are all the questions that you have to sort of figure out. So and again, he's another guy, crushed the Senior Bowl, relatively speaking. Cool, but that's not what happened when he was on the field in college. He was pretty good, and that's the thing. People get mad about this stuff but there's some simple idioms when it comes to this sport, which is if you want guys to be great, at the highest level, you probably need them to be great at the levels below it. You're trying to bet on the idea that well, this guy's going to be a better pro than a college player. Does it happen? Yeah. Is it common? No.
Okay. How about Cincinnati wideout Cyrus Allen?
Developmental, but really interesting because he actually, in terms of his just watching him, he has a release package. He knows how to get open. And it has speed. Hands are not great. That's going to be the thing that hurts him. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure about his production. Let me look it up as I'm talking. But like, I think he's probably going to be more in the slot than he is. But like, and
but was he 5'11", $190?
Well, he's listed 5. I don't know what he actually measured in, but he's listed 5'11", 180.
Okay.
Presumably, that's now the thing that stands out with him is his touchdowns. He had 13 touchdowns this past year, which is just receiving. So it's crazy. But like, I think in a lot of ways he's a more fun version of Isaiah Bond in terms of like you watch the stuff, like you watch him in drills and stuff. You're like, wow, look at him like make guys miss. Whereas Isaiah Bond is sort of more raw in that element. And Isaiah Bond's like, screw it, I'm faster than you, and I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
So I think Cyrus Allen is more intriguing from that element, but I think that they largely fulfill the same role. Now, is that a problem to have more than one? Not necessarily, but like I think he's a lot like Isaiah Bond.
Okay. How about last but not least, how about Justin Jolly, tight end out of NC State? You and I have talked about him before.
Yeah. If you want another F tight end, which I don't, but if you were to want one, Justin Jolly is like real good. He is interesting because he's not tall enough to be a true Y. So he's, again, that off the ball, slot, backfield, wing, those type of things. And
what's he about 6'3", 240?
The 250 was what he measured in. And that was like one of the questions was like, because he is like when he played at UConn, he was maybe 220.
Yeah.
And the question with him was like, how is he going to handle putting on more weight? And, super productive in his first year at NC State, not quite as productive in his second year, but still fabulous for a tight end.
Yeah.
So the question was, well, it was the weight a problem? And it seems like at least at the Senior Bowl, the 250 looked good on him. Like he's about right. So like he's the guy to me where you sit there and go sneakily. He could. I don't think he's gonna be as good as Fannin necessarily, but I think he could be a guy where you sit there and go, oh, he went in round 3 or 4 and is a really good player. I could absolutely see that being the case.
Okay. Now we all know. We all know what the Browns' needs are. We all know O-line, wide receiver, maybe a little bit of corner if you want to get crazy. What would you say? Are there 1 or 2, maybe even 3 prospects in this draft that would almost be guilty pleasures for you? Like guys that don't really fit what we're looking to do this year, this offseason, but wherever they end up, they're going to be studs and they're going to be impact players.
Yeah, in fact, like for the most part, I'm looking at those guys in like the 3rd round and later element, which is how you end up on a guy like Sutton.
Yeah.
But the guy that nobody's talking about, who I think is going to be like an impact player in the league based on his profile, and I wrote about him for this Monday, is Harold Perkins. Harold Perkins was the best player, like one of the best players in all of college football for 2 years. Tore his ACL in his 3rd year, and then was really good this past year in a slightly different position. And like he is basically JOK size. He's a little bit, his arms aren't quite as long, his hands aren't quite as big. Not that JOKs were big or long or anything. He's like 6 foot. He 220. He, as a true freshman, led LSU. I should say every year he played a meaningful amount of games, he led the team in sacks and tackles for loss. Which means
isn't he like as a freshman he was an edge guy, right?
Yeah.
But he's an off-ball linebacker.
Well, or is he a slot?
Yeah,
because that's where I put him and see if he can do it. But like you can use him as a nickel linebacker. Like he can do it. He can do those JOK things a little bit. I don't think he's very good necessarily taking on contact, but he is fast. And if you watch him and you turn the sound on, he's an angry young man. I love the way he plays. He's violent as hell. And I think he's really interesting because, if the Browns are running the same system, one of the things that Jim Schwartz desperately has always wanted was more speed at the second level. Obviously got Devin Bush, Carson Schwarzenegger, but like if you can put this guy in the slot and you want to get that element of attacking forward and causing problems, if you want to take away, a bubble screen, or you want to get quick pressure from the second level on the quarterback where like they don't see him coming, like he can do those things like JOK does. He is a menace. But why I like what I really like about Harold Perkins is the fact that if the Browns were so inclined, you can have him play like a slot element on rundowns, and then on 3rd and long, you can put him on the edge against a slow-footed tackle, and he's going to cause them problems. He ate up your boy, Caden Proctor, just destroyed him in terms of just because he's so fast and he's just so quick. And if you're not on him, like he can bend a little bit, like he's not going to be a guy who does a whole lot in terms of winning with his hands because he's going to get swallowed up by NFL guys. But like when he can get them off balance, and what makes him interesting for me is you've got Myles Garrett on the one side. Everybody's slanting their protection over to him. So if he's coming off the other side, athletic quarterbacks, he can take them away. And there are clips, and one of them, the one that stood out to me, was Jalen Milroe in 2023, where Jalen Milroe tries to evacuate the pocket to the right, and Harold Fan just like cuts it off. He's that fast in terms of that, and just the level of the way he plays. Now, he will miss tackles. He will do sloppy stuff. He will play out of control at times. But like in terms of what I think the Browns need to do, if they're sitting there going, what can we do on defense? I think Harold Perkins answers a lot of those questions, because what's the biggest question mark you have for this defense? Largely, it's, one of the questions that kept coming up over and over and over again. Why don't you cause more turnovers?
Yeah.
Harold Perkins has 5 interceptions and 8 forced fumbles in the 3 seasons he played the full season. Like he does those things where you sit there and go, oh man, he gets you the football, just an impact player. And like, PFF's board has him in like round 5. I saw NFL SE, neither of them had him in the top 8 linebackers.
Where would you seriously consider taking him? Where would you start?
The second day 3s on the, I would absolutely not hesitate to run the card up, because like we can talk ourselves all about needs and all this other stuff, but like once you're to day 3, you're just like, I want players who are going to play on the field.
Yeah.
And like maybe there's a world where this kid fails, but his profile is otherworldly in terms of production. Like there's a whole lot of his teammates have been drafted. Yeah. Braden Swinson and Mekhi Wingo, and like he outproduced all of them, even though he's 18 years old. And like those guys tend to be really, really good. And like if the knock on him is okay, he's small. Well, good news. You ran this with JOK and you were just fine. Now the difference is like
smaller, yeah.
The difference is that Harold Perkins does have that edge ability where you can really mess around. Like perfect world, JOK, divine intervention comes in and goes, oh, your neck is perfectly healthy. Get back out there, champ. Let's get back after it. And you put them both out there, and we just get after it from that standpoint. But like, because Myles Garrett's obviously a freak show, but like because the Browns have big ends for the most part, getting this like little extra thing. And the other thing I like about Harold Perkins and the anger that he has in him is one, he will make for what should be fun on special teams, but just this, he gives you this extra, like he's a roster saver theoretically. If he's a linebacker, but he can occasionally come in and be a speed edge.
Yep.
Okay, then he takes care of a roster spot for you there, which I think is valuable.
And he plays special teams. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he's got obviously. This is one of the reasons I don't like the new kickoff rule, because it like takes away from guys like this. I still think he'll be on it, but he's going to be a menace on punt coverage.
Pete, let me ask you something. I mean, different types of players, but some of the same relative impact given the position. What do you think of Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech?
Production's insane.
Yeah.
In terms of, again, and you talk about what's the thing the Browns need? Turnovers.
Yeah.
Who just gets the ball? Like,
yeah. That was my thinking on the whole thing. I feel like pairing him with Carson Schlesinger, they both have a nose for the ball. They both have just a nose to disrupt things. And I watched a whole thing about like his version of the peanut punch. And he forced like 7 fumbles this year, like something crazy.
The question you have with Jacob Rodriguez, and it's not really a it's not like you can't do it because Carson Schwartz can line up at whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want him to play Will, he can play Will. Rodriguez is at Mike. So it does ask you to say, are you okay with the idea of Carson Schwartz not being the Mike or only being the Mike on sort of obvious passing downs?
Yeah.
If assuming you take Rodriguez off the field for that. So that's an interesting conundrum. My guess is the Browns want to stay with what they have. And again, it comes down to, I think the Browns just want to be faster than Rodriguez is going to be overall.
Yeah.
That Carson Schwartz has the range he has, and hopefully you have also a Will that's super fast and can close down because like the way they play, you've got to be able to make up for mistakes or not even mistakes. It's like you're asking the defensive line to be super aggressive. Doing that and also being like a super honest contained player is really difficult to do.
Yes,
so like when teams can sort of figure out or get a tendency or like that left end, which we see like a lot, crashes inside and they go outside, somebody's got to be able to get out there. And that's where I wonder if like they sit there and go, maybe not. Now, the thing is, I'm curious to see. I think Rodriguez may go earlier than maybe some people are projecting. And it's weird to say that because like this is a really good off-ball linebacker class. Like guys are going to go early. Like in most years they don't. Obviously, Arvell Reese depends on what you call him, but like Sonny Styles is a dude. The kid from Georgia is really good. So it's like I guess in some ways it's a really bad year for Rodriguez to be out there, other than the fact that like this draft class isn't like super sexy in terms of, the premium position. So like that might work in his favor, but like, I will be curious to see where he ends up going. Cause on one hand, I could see where teams like go, we don't want to miss out on this guy. Or on the other hand, they go, we're going to let all these other teams pick these super premium linebackers. We're going to hang back. We're going to pick this dude.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look forward to Sunday now. We got Super Bowl coming up. Little Seahawks, little Patriots action. Now, personally, Pete, I feel like this is a game that Seattle wins 8 out of 10 matchups. I just feel like they're the better team. But this is a really well-coached New England defense. And I don't totally trust Sam Darnold just yet. I don't know how anybody can. And big game Sam Darnold is still a conundrum in my eyes. I feel like this is going to be a fun game. What's your take on this?
I think the Seahawks are going to win and win big.
You think it's going to be a beat?
Yeah, I just think the Seahawks do too much. Now, the problem, the potential issue I see is if the interior of the defensive line for the Patriots just mauls the Seahawks interior, and then as a result, they get Sam Darnold very nervous. At that point, all bets are off.
Yeah.
But what's sort of been interesting is, the fired Sean McDermott seemed to have figured something out with how his defense played Drake May. And teams have been copying him in the playoffs. And Drake May is still a very, very talented player.
Yeah.
But like they've largely been advancing because
the defense is just killing people. Will Campbell has struggled. Mm-hmm.
He's obviously Drake May has fumbled the ball a number of times. It's like teams are legitimately giving him problems. So he's got to play well and protect the football. But like if Darnold, if the Seahawks can get that interior pressure the Patriots can get that interior pressure and limit the running game and then cause problems for Sam Darnold, I think this game could get really interesting for the Patriots. Now, we'll see if the Seahawks have come up with answers for that, if they've got some way to be able to run the ball, because Sam Darnold obviously had the game of his life against the Rams, 346 yards or whatever and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
If they can find a way to run the ball and Sam Darnold can just stay being reasonably effective, I think the Seahawks are going to go away with this. I just think the defense they have is just cooking. I think the special teams give them an advantage. So I continue to like the Seahawks. I'm just noting what I think is the potential Achilles heel for the Seahawks up front.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, because Charbonnet's out, so it's just Kenneth Walker. He's had a really good playoff though. He's run real tough these last few weeks. Yeah, look, Seattle's the better team. I really like their coaching staff. You know what I find very interesting is now with so after this game they're putting the team up for sale, right? New ownership always like they always kind of do their own thing, right? Like wouldn't that kind of make you nervous as a Seahawk fan? Like you finally have this alignment, everything looks amazing. You're in the Super Bowl, and now you got this like kind of rain cloud of a potential ownership change that could really mix things up.
Yeah, so naturally, the Seahawks are saying that Bob Kraft basically leaked this to make sure that this was a thing and that this was in the minds of the Seahawks players and everybody else to try to make this an issue in the building to be like, oh, what's going to happen? Which I'm totally going to believe because I don't like Robert Kraft. But yeah, I mean, like you would think on the one hand, you'd be like, I'm just going to let this thing roll. I've got John Schneider. He's going to be executive of the year. I've got Mike McDonald, who's great. But if you're paying $8 billion,
yeah, man,
please
play.
You're going to want to play with your toys. So you're going to be like, I'm smart enough to get $8 billion. Of course I know what I'm doing.
I can figure this out.
Yeah, like this, and this is the mentality these people have. Like, so yeah, that's always a real question. Who wants to pay $8 to $10 billion to just let things sit as they are?
The sidelines.
Like, you're like, man, I just spent $8 to $10 billion just to watch, just to let it go.
One of that owner's loge.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, you're paying that much money, you want to do something. I don't know what that thing is, and who knows? Maybe there's a scenario where like, this whole thing works out and decide in the sense that they decide to keep the team because the current owner is extraordinarily hands off.
Yeah,
and lets it run.
Yeah, that's the thing that would kill me. It's like you got the perfect owner. It's like your football people do your football stuff. You're in the Super Bowl.
That's
all you need is like another Jimmy Haslam to come in there and be like, all right.
Here's hoping. Here's hoping. Get in there and medal. Listen, you paid that money. Go play with your toys and get after it.
You do you. Absolutely.
Listen, coach the team your first year. Why not? You paid all the money. Get in there, call some plays.
All right. So next big thing up on the schedule is the combine, right? We got, outside of the Super Bowl, obviously. We had a super successful Pro Bowl this evening. I saw in the chat that Shedeur threw an interception. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with staying on brand for that. That's a good thing.
Just more to learn from. Just keep learning those lessons.
Listen,
I hope he learned. I hope he learned a ton. If he threw 6 picks and learned from all of them, great.
Yeah, strongly agree on that. It still kind of blows my mind that the Browns had 3 Pro Bowl quarterbacks on the roster this year. It's pretty incredible.
Just crazy. Like to find out that Justin Fields like, nah, I'm good.
That stung a little bit. I was hoping he was the one that Shedeur got the nod over, but maybe not. I don't know, man. You got any takeaways from the Senior Bowl that we didn't touch on? Any prospects that caught your fancy or anything of that sort?
Yeah, as far as like prospects and stuff, it was an interesting week from the standpoint of like there's a couple stories that I'm sort of interested to see how they play out. Colton Hood of Tennessee is interesting, and you could go, well, the Browns certainly don't need another corner. I totally get it.
I was going to say a corner, yeah.
What I'm curious to see is how many teams play what he does. Just an old school press corner. I could say, oh, well, maybe the Steelers will take him or whatever. But like, I'll be curious to see if there's like this weird thing, and it won't be because he's like a bad person or anything else where like teams are just, we don't use this. And if he's going to fall to a point where the Browns are like, we do, and go, we're going to take him. That's one of the things that I'm curious. I could be dead wrong. He could end up going in the first round. It won't matter. But like, it's just curious to see just the way that some of these guys, you got to have the right fit, and not everybody has a great fit.
Are you talking potentially 39, or are you talking about third round for that one?
I would hope third round, but like there may be a situation where the Browns are like, he's just so good. Again, I did not have linebacker on the docket at 33. So, I'm hearing Andrew Berry saying we really got to overhaul offense, and then when he gets really tempted by some safety or something, like well, Caleb Downs gonna be a Hall of Famer.
What if Downs fell to 24?
Okay, I don't think he will, but
no, of course, I don't either. I'm trying to find out what your breaking point would be.
No, I'd take him at 24.
Yeah.
What's interesting is there's rumblings that he's not going to test well, and we're going to have the Kyle Hamilton conversation again. He's not very fast and all this other stuff, and then he's going to end up on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm going to have to deal with it for the next decade.
Don't even say that, man.
So that's one of the things that's interesting. I am curious to see what happens with some of the defensive line. One of the things I continue to be curious to see is the Browns have flirted with big body defensive tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they drafted Siaki Ika, and Deion Walker was a guy they looked at last year. I'm curious to see, and I don't know where the rubber would meet the road, if they want to get a big body in there to theoretically what I assume is going to be replaced Shelby Harris. And where, because you get into the guys like who's the dude? Oh, the dude Darrell Jackson, who's like a prototypical don't get moved guy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the Browns want to attack, and that was the whole. We're going to turn a dump truck into a Ferrari with Siaki Ika, insanity. But is this going to be a year where they're we really want to get that big body guy? Is it a guy like Darrell Jackson who's really good? He just showed up to Senior Bowl and started killing people. And again, this is where I sit here and go, be careful with this stuff. But he's legitimately, that's what he is. He's a stuffing guy. Is there going to be a guy like that? And the guy from Texas Tech is going to be way before the Browns should even be in the thought process. But nevertheless, that was a guy that people are like, whoa, look at this guy. Again, I sit there and get very worried about it, though he played very well for Texas Tech. It's not a situation where you're going, oh, where'd this guy come from? Lee Hunter was legit pretty good.
Yeah.
But is there a guy that falls into this, or are they going to just get another sneaky quick
year prove deal guy?
Because if they end up doing that, there are guys that could make sense, and one of them is Zane Durant from Penn State, who's light, all the things you wouldn't want in terms of size, but just does the thing. He gets off the ball and causes problems and produces. Or
isn't that kind of an Aiden Huntington though, a kind of undersized spark plug? Yeah.
Or even smaller, you go to the guy who's at the Shrine Game, and you draft a kid who's from Copley High School, not far from me, Landon Robinson from the Naval Academy, who was just an out and out stud for them. Now, the other question you have with this is, with a guy like Landon Robinson's, he's listed 6 foot, 287. I think he weighed in 280 or something like that. And the thing you always get with those guys is okay, but how much of his weight is a product of he's in the Navy and they make you do stuff like push-ups, sit-ups, and run, as opposed to straight up powerlifting, and he's going to have an easier time holding weight or doing those things that are you want him to be able to do, that are really interesting. But here again, from a production standpoint, absolutely dominant for the Naval Academy, and in that weird unit they have, but nevertheless was really good. So that's sort of the other thing that was curious, at least from a defensive standpoint, in terms of that. I think, the safety position is the one where I sat there and went, I don't know if there's anyone that I necessarily love for what the Browns need. There's a million guys who seem to do what the Browns have, and Ronnie Hickman and that type of thing. So I don't know if there's anybody that really necessarily stands out from that standpoint. Genesis Smith didn't end up participating in the week, I don't think. He's one that's sort of interesting as a possibility. But the Senior Bowl running backs were fine, I think, for the most part. Again, I think it's a good illustration that, like, the Browns were smart to attack the problem last year, and maybe there's a role player they like, but ultimately, I don't know that there's anybody that you're sitting there going, yep, I desperately want him. And unfortunately, the guy mentioned the last time we did this broke his damn foot, Nick Singleton. So there's a bunch of guys that are sort of fit role players, and like, but I wonder if the supply element is going to be a problem, and that these guys are going to get overdrafted relative to where they should go. And you sit there and you go, well, we're good, and we're just going to take an undrafted free agent because we think the talent is basically in after the draft is going to be not far off from the talent that's being picked in like the 4th round, which is incidentally how they got Rennie Hickman as a free agent.
Yeah. Well, how about Pete? Tell me about Jaden Ott, because he had a good year for California a year ago. Then he went to Oklahoma and like did nothing. But then he popped up. He had a decent little Senior Bowl. Do you know what happened in Oklahoma?
I don't know what happened in Oklahoma, but you're year off. He was really good in 2023.
Was it 2023?
Yeah,
okay.
like, and everybody's like, whoa, look out for this dude in 2024, and it just did not happen. I think he got hurt.
He might have got hurt, because I remember when they played. It was the first I saw Mendoza play. They played Miami in like week 2 or 3 last year, and they took it to Miami. Cam Ward had to stage like a crazy comeback for the second half. But Jaden Ott, he impressed me then. Him and Mendoza both, But I saw his numbers at Oklahoma. He did nothing, and then I see him like playing well in the Senior Bowl. I'm like, what the hell? What happened to this kid?
Yeah, he went from his 2023. He had over 1,500 yards total offense and 14 touchdowns. He had over 1,000 yards, like 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cal was not good in 2024. But he had, 600 yards of total offense. Now, a lot of that was receiving, which is good.
Yeah.
And then this year, he touched the ball 23 times. Now, to your point, you sit there and watch him in the Senior Bowl, like, woo, he's pretty good. Like, and he's a big kid. Like, he's short, but he's dense and athletic. So he's sort of in that category where you sit there and go, maybe he's interesting as a flyer. But like, again, you're probably sitting there going, man, I'd really like to get him later than he probably goes.
Yeah. Well, and a thing that I'm having an issue with all these running backs, I feel like I don't like any of these guys enough, or scratch that. I should say, I don't think any of these guys are good enough, or at least better than Raheem Sanders, that I would want to burn a draft pick on it. Like, that's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, you got 3. Obviously they drafted 2, but they ended with 3 guys out of that class. That
can play. Sanders was tough when he was given an opportunity.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken Quinshon Judkins at 36, but he's really good. I'm not going to argue that. My thought process was just focused on premium positions early in the draft. Now, I said the same thing for Carson Switzer. I came away going, wow, those guys are really good. But smart on them to get 3 guys from that draft, because like, to sort of bolster your point, I think Raheem Sanders is in this draft. He's drafted and potentially, maybe early day 3.
Yeah.
I just think that the drop off is that significant. And I thought he was good enough to be pretty good, a 5th, 6th round pick last year. And I was kind of like, I'm hoping he's still there so the Browns could get him. Obviously they were done in the draft round 5. And I was really happy when they got him on a waiver claim. But like, I'm looking at this and going, Raheem Sanders would be a like welcome addition to this draft class for most people, and the Browns already have him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, well, as we're kind of wrapping things up for this week, big week for the Browns. Obviously, the Monken deal's nice that we finally have a direction that we're moving towards, and now everything's going to slowly fall into place. I would assume that by the weekend we'll know about Jim Schwartz, right? Like, I'm thinking by Friday things will be settled to the point that we'll either know he's back or know that we're moving on. You feel reasonable about that?
Yes. I think this is it in terms of this week.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not such – I really don't think they're going to give him yet another weekend to sort of figure this thing out. I think whether or not they're actually saying this, it would not surprise me if they're like, listen, man, by Friday we got to know something, because otherwise we're not. Yeah, who knows? But like, that seems very reasonable to me. in terms of where they need to go. And I'm not rushing him or anything, but I think it's less about like timeline and hiring the coaching staff as much as people are sort of sitting there going, we got to figure this thing out, and more about you've got to get an answer from him more than anything, rather than being like, how long are we going to do this dance?
Yeah.
One, do you get yourself a situation where you're sitting around, well, you're under contract, we'll wait for you. Like, they've got stuff to do. They got work to get going. So, like, that's stuff that's not getting done. And again, I don't think it's a time issue necessarily, but I think they want to be able to be like, this is, we know what we're doing, so now we can either pivot or not. And I don't think, obviously there's an element to this where like you're okay from the standpoint of like there are, Clint Kubiak's not going to be able to officially accept a job with the Raiders until the day after the Super Bowl at the earliest. I assume he's doing some things in the meantime to sort of, or maybe he's not. But I assume he's done a little bit about like in the interview process for sort of like, tethering some assistants together and being like, hey, what do you think about this? All that type of stuff. By virtue of like the Brown situation, they are putting this in neutral, because what you cannot do is you cannot be Todd Monken and go, well, I'm just going to start looking right now and wait for this. You have to get an answer first, because obviously if you're in a situation where you're like, if you're saying to Jim Schwartz, hey man, I need an answer, you can't then be like, well, I started looking for this and Jim Schwartz finds out. He goes, well, you were making me wait, so I had to get started. Like, you got to get a real answer so you can then take a real fresh look. And to the same point, like, you don't want to be the guy you're talking to about a defensive coordinator job and go, oh, Jim's back. Yeah. I guess we don't need to do this. Like, I think they want that answer by, if it's Friday, that seems reasonable, so that they can actually do what they are doing. Now, everything else, he's got a little bit of a grace period in the sense of he's still got other things to hire. Mm-hmm. Wide receivers coach, running backs coach, still not done. And I don't know if there's anything else on offense. I think everything else is at least reported from offensive line coach, quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach, and then his offensive coordinator are all linked, whether or not they're official yet. So there's a little bit of that grace period where he's got other stuff he can work on. But I think he's going to get, I don't necessarily antsy. I just think it's understandably like, I want to be able to move on this to what you're saying.
All right. Well, thank you guys for sticking with us for these 2 hours. All there damn near 600 of you. Always a pleasure. Pete, always a pleasure. Wonderful show as usual. We will be back next week, Tuesday, 8 o'clock, same time, same place. And we look forward to breaking down some more stuff. Hopefully we'll get some Jim Schwartz news. We can talk about the Super Bowl. And then we got all sorts of offseason goodies headed our way, boys. Thank you again to the OBR Streaming Network for hosting us. And check out OBR.com when you guys get the chance. Pete and Joe heading out. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you.